Well, g'day and welcome to another episode of the HSEQ Leaders podcast. Today we have Alastair Milne joining us for a special episode for Mental Health Awareness Week. I believe, if I'm not miscorrected there, Alastair. But Alastair, welcome and introduce yourself and for the listeners.
Yeah, thanks, John, and hello, folks, in what is Mental Health Awareness Week this year, 2023 in October. So my name's Alastair Milne. I am a facilitator, coach, trainer in mental health, safety, people skills, and former life I was a regional safety manager in oil and gas. I'm also fortunate to be on the committee here in the Australian Institute of Health and Safety in West Australia, and try and put together events to help share some knowledge whilst helping people get connected together. And that is the LinkedIn bio, you could say. I'm all about trying to help people feel cared for by their tribe or by their group. And in what is Mental Health Week, it's a great opportunity to share just some stories as well. And John's kindly asked for a bit of background and the ability to help others through training, etc., is really good for me now, because I was really unwell 3.5 years ago now. But this is somewhat really helpful, I should say.
Well, we don't have to go into detail there, but just as a key focus, but just quickly, how did you get to, let's talk about your safety career. Where you got up to that regional manager point prior to that.
Yeah. So thanks, John. So I was originally a field chemist, so a beaker from the Muppets, white lab coat, onshore in the lab, test tubes, burettes, all these sorts of glassware sort of things. I worked then offshore, went onto the rigs, spent a fair bit of time in the rigs in the North Sea, and then moved down here to Australia to be supporting more from an onshore base role in terms of chemicals. And at that point, there was an opportunity within the organisation. They were looking for somebody to lead the safety programmes and try influence as much as one person can, influence culture, but try influence things down in this neck of the woods. So that was a great opportunity to move into safety, and I studied enviro at uni, so I've had that background of sort of caring a wee bit more maybe. And I got the opportunity with the implementation of a new electronic system, but then also what was it going to do? What difference was it going to make to people on the ground and managers and leaders as well, in terms of supporting folks to be and stay safe. So that was quite a cool part, John. I had a newly created role, and I had the autonomy there to really chat with peers and folks around what was working, what wasn't, and try and take my own learnings from coming from a people-related sort of sales background into trying to support safety across the organisation. So that was fascinating time, and still some of my most rewarding times and most rewarding relationships and friendships were through that time as well. And
Alison, what about outside of work? Because we are more than what we do for a job. What about outside of that? Who are you outside of work?
Yeah, so I'm a bona fide mammal. Yeah, class 1 mammal, middle-aged
you and me both.
middle-aged man who like to try to stay young. I used to be still follow football, soccer, my neck of the woods. But cycling is probably the main passion in all its different ways of doing it, on road, off road. It's a great release, a great focus. It's a great morale booster as well when you can sort of push yourself. And for me, an amazingly supportive network of people. And when you're riding along on bikes, you see people as people. You may ride with people for years, and you might not even know their name, but even more likely, you you won't know what they do for a job. You just know them as a person with this bike or that bike. You just see people as people stripped back, as you say, John, from just being a label in terms of the job title that we've got or who we work for.
And you also got a great sense of choice with dogs, which we won't go into, but I'm a big fan of your dog with the German Shepherd. But fill me in, though, mate, about, you started up the consultancy and the business in last year, 2022. Tell us and the listeners, I guess, what you're doing with yourself now.
Yeah, so the dog is going around here, by the way. Sky's my German. I love the fact that you remember, John. She is going here somewhere. You might hear her soon, actually. So on the back of being, like I said, unwell 3.5 years ago now, I've had great support to set up the business. I retrained, studied business psych up the road here at UWA. And that really helped me to understand how me and my workplace were interacting and how I can then help folks out when I go back into the corporate world. And it's not about throwing rocks or that. It's about understanding how we interact with our workplaces such that we can improve things. So first up was the retraining, study, looked at, got great support in terms of a return to work plan, testing out, is this an area I could work in? I did a lot of training. And that's what I really enjoyed from the safety side of things. I really enjoyed facilitating and helping folks through training. So we felt that was an avenue that could really fit with me and be more congruent, which may sound quite daunting to a lot of people to think that, geez, how could that be less stressful for you going to deliver training? But certainly I've found that I am, and for folks that know me, I am in the room when I'm working, I'm on the move, my brain is thinking as to how can I help folks join the dots in terms of what they're learning. But I do say it, folks, as what I love is I don't have an emotional hangover. I don't have an emotional hangover the next day or the challenges with it. So we built it around training. I've been fortunate to then, I started with doing mental health first aid. I then was taken on as a trainer with Lifeline. More in the last year, it was AMWA around our people skills, and you could say life skills, because these day-to-day skills, don't underestimate the impact these can have on our own and others' mental health and the general feel and vibe and culture in a workplace. So yeah, and more recently, I've been able to support revision of some mental health programs, training programs, and we got a couple of new partnerships that are just coming up right now. So I work mainly through partnerships with credible organisations that have content already and seek to support them in facilitating. And now and again, I'm fortunate that I get to do a bit of direct consultancy work as well, which keeps things fresh, and a bit of meditation.
Oh, it's good.
Folks instructions. So it's cool, John. And as I said, the safety, the Australian Institute of Health and Safety, the supportive work through there, again, that's been a tribe. It's been a great support, and I hope that in some way I'm repaying that with the events that I put on around the body of knowledge, and others as well. So
you've really been leading that as well, which is great. But Alastair, fill me in then. You obviously work across full organisations, not just safety professionals, but as a safety professional, where in a former life, where do you see the challenges for mental health relating to safety professionals?
Yeah, I think as always, I come back to what's the evidence, what's the basis for what we're doing. I think there's challenges around implementing programs which are maybe at the wrong end of things. Maybe they're too focused on the maybe the warm and fuzzies of things, versus getting into some of the things around workplace behaviours, for example. I just sat on a train the trainer course last week where we were living and breathing the challenges that we have in workplaces and in society around the different workplace behaviours in general, whether it's bullying, harassment, and other behaviours as well. That's a real challenge. That's such a challenge, and such a challenge when it's landing. Now it's like safety professionals have had, if I go back to my time in oil and gas, there was, process safety was thrown in there on top of, general safety, and then we've had environment was thrown in there as well, and quality maybe goes in, and training goes in, and now with mental health and psychosocial, we've got, okay, now you're expected to be into HR as well. So really important to be able to cut through and find some understanding the evidence for the different programs, the models, understanding the models behind anything that's being promoted in the organization, rather than it being sort of knee-jerk reaction or flavour of the month. I think that's probably from a program point of view. I think challenging for safety professional again is around this push we have at the minute for empathy. Now, believe me, empathy is massive, it's huge, it's needed. But as with anything, too much or an expectation of too much can be counterproductive. And when I think there for example, my own surgeon going to get shoulder fixed up soon, and fantastic surgeon, technically really gifted, and imagining there the challenges if he was too empathetic day to day dealing with people with injuries, he would be completely burnt out, and there's a good chance he would be unlikely to be able to perform as well technically in the theatre. And that really got me thinking as well around leaders, and even so you could almost say like safety professionals are expected to be the pseudo carers in organizations, alongside HR folks and alongside return to work folks and that as well. And that comes even for folks where it maybe comes naturally and as a strength, there's still a burden to that. There's still a burden. There's still only so much that we can empathize and be able to do without being burnt out. But imagine if you're somebody where, and this is not being critical, if you are somebody where your skills are elsewhere, right, there's a whole range of different people skills and technical skills we could have which are needed. Just because you're maybe not the most empathetic doesn't mean that you're highly valued and highly needed in an organization. I just think this push, and I've been doing some reading lately, and it's almost like my next little topic, because I love to challenge and look at things that everybody's buying into and being like, what's the reality of this? So empathy is one to watch this space. There's one book in particular out at the minute, which I'm really looking forward to reading, where we may go through empathy towards compassion, which is more action oriented. I'm concerned, I could understand how you may be feeling. And I'm sort of thinking, how can I help you? I've only got a limited amount of time. How can I help you to take action, or what action can I take such that we move through almost that window of empathizing in a shorter term with less impact on ourselves, and we get more stuff done, right? So we can move forward. But wallowing in empathy, you've got to be more empathetic. I don't underestimate the challenges, especially when it's maybe lumbered on to safety folks. How does that resonate? What do you think?
Do you know what? I'm not just saying this because you're on a platform, and we're having a discussion about this. I've not heard this conversation before, Alastair, and it resonates a lot with me, right? I think something that isn't spoken about, it's empathy for the sake of empathy a lot of the time, and you have to be empathetic, right? And no one's saying you don't have to be empathetic, but you're absolutely right. When I talk to safety professionals that are struggling, one of the things that they are struggling with often is burnout, and that is perhaps because they're taking too much on. And I think that's also a new thing as well, where you say, the HR remit is coming more and more off HR and towards safety, and those lines are blurring. And it's not that someone doesn't care, right? But it's how much can you give away for yourself to how many people, So it's a very, very, very interesting point, actually. And I've not heard someone raise it. So you're probably ahead of the curve.
No, and John, this is the thing, is I'm being honest with you. It's new to. I mean, I've been digging around this thing probably about 2 months ago, and doing my own research and starting to challenge and doing. I was like, oh, okay, this is, pity is one thing, sympathy is the next thing, empathy, but we can move sort of through that. And the one thing for me is, this isn't all about warm and fuzzies, because you know me, I like to get stuff done and implemented. And this is what I like, is we move through empathy towards action. That's the huge part that I like. Whereas it's going to be more likely to be effective for the person needing the help, and also for the person who is the supporter, you could say, or the leader. It's going to be more useful to consider. So, not professing it works, got no evidence at the minute, just seems to resonate with me. Something we might like to read into.
We'll watch the space. Look, I'm intrigued, mate. So you can chat to me about it if no one else wants to talk to you about it, at the very least. But on that note, you've obviously been a hiring manager. You've spoken to a lot of safety professionals, and when on the back of this empathy discussion, you can see some of the challenges, obviously, that safety professionals have. What do you think the businesses should look for when hiring safety professionals, or is that too much of a generic phrase?
I think I'm always going to caveat this with, this is Ali's opinion and view based on my experience. Right,
of course.
Okay, that's all. And I have my own biases in terms of what I would look for and the things that I look for. So of course it's going to be tainted a wee bit. When I think of the folks who, there's two ways to look at this. When I look at the folks I was fortunate to help bring into organizations, three ways actually. The folks I was fortunate to help bring into organizations, the folks I was fortunate to be able to help get a leg up and support them as they moved from operations or sales into safety. I certainly had experience with that and enjoyed that part. And I guess from a more negative point of view is the people who left the organization because unfortunately their reputation or that suffered in their time in the safety role. And it's, geez, does it come back to, I don't know if it does come back to the empathy part, because that would be really cruel. That would be like I was shoehorning it in there. It's almost
shoehorning it into but no, mate, it's interesting.
Customer focus. Sorry, John, customer focus. So this is where I'm sort of going. Be a bit harsh to say maybe empathy, customer focus, and that's not meaning that we kiss customers proverbial, but being able to, and I say customer in terms of looking at your operations team, or your leaders, or anybody internally. So I guess that's maybe the first thing, John, is that you aim to understand and partner with your customer. I was going to say serve, but I sort of corrected myself in there, because then there's a level of assertiveness required, and I guess that might be so. Number one would be understand, see internally as customers, and see it as selling. I'll be honest with you, and I have learned so much in the last 3 years around assertiveness, in terms of, I think that's something that I rewind back 10 years ago, or what would that be, 13 years ago now? If I could have had the learnings then around assertiveness when dealing with rolling out, and when dealing with implementing programs internally, I think a degree of assertiveness is there. And then try and maybe get to
assertiveness is not to be confused either with aggression or by any means, right? But that's where it connects with, and I love that, pleasing customer service. I mean, it's a support function, right?
Ooh, that's part of the challenge, and that's a great call, John, because because of the work I've been doing, work on myself and work in terms of delivering people skills programs. Assertiveness is a learned skill. So we are born, and we'll communicate in terms of challenges. we'll go passive, or we'll go overtly aggressive generally. And I understand that with me, a lot of the times, and it may be surprising, but a lot of the times I would have gone passive for too long, right, and stewed too long in things. Whereas the passiveness is a strength, and being able to then move into quite rapidly within a matter of a day or so of a safety challenge, where you go passive and you collect your thoughts and gather it, and then be able to respond assertively. I think I would have made a massive difference to an ally, 10, 12 years ago or so. So I think a degree of assertiveness can really help,
I think that comes with experience. But not aggressive. No.
Yeah, and this is where one person's assertiveness can be another person's aggressiveness. Yeah, when we come back to the workplace leaders type of thing. Yeah, it's really quite fascinating.
But I think assertiveness as well is that almost authenticity piece, which I mention a lot, where you know what you are doing as a professional and comes with experience, where you can be assertive because you can back yourself, because you know that your decision, or that the reasoning behind your decisions and course of action.
Yeah, and that's cool. So that's probably the third one that would tie it together, John, quite great. And that brings me full circle back to the drive around evidence and understanding where you get your info from. So I would say that would probably be the three things: is look on your role as a business partner. Let's not have any servant relationship. So here we've got a shared partnership, a degree of assertiveness, with which we can use to communicate the programs, ideas, models which we have learned from a place of evidence, right? Not necessarily gathering just data, but some form of model, some form of evidence or forms. This is preferably, we've got three sources of material that are leading us to this. I think that would be a fantastic combo. So client, internal, business partnering, assertiveness, and the desire for evidence.
Brilliant. It's probably changed a lot. We're talking about, I guess, the future in some ways, from probably when you initially entered the industry. But where do you see the profession, Alastair, evolving in the future? What's your take on that?
Well, evolving. Where do I see it evolving? I see it evolving. We sat here. I can't remember a time ever when people said, "Geez, we've gone quite stagnant as safety professionals, don't you think?" In the last year or so,
we've gotten lazy. Yeah.
The profession's gone rather stagnant, and we've gone rather backwards, and we're being forced into. We've been forced into a shoebox. I don't. There's anything, but I don't have a crystal ball, and as you know, Johnny, like my opinions with stuff is generally a bit of time to think with them or so. But I think where's it going? Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure with that one. Evolving. I think I'll tell you where I am interested is I'm really interested in the next steps and really interested to see organizations now that are taking the management mental health, mental illness, or psychosocial hazards, and organizations that are, you could say, already mature, and let's not get into defining mature or not.
Yeah, could be here all night. Yeah.
Or those that maybe have the systems and more, I'm saying robust, more practiced. Let's say that, right?
Practice. They're more I like practiced. That. I might actually take that as that. I like that.
More practice. I'm not saying that practice means that they're good, right? But the more practiced organizations, how they take in, and I said to somebody earlier today, it's almost like if the language is safety, we're not learning a new language, and I'm going to do this, John, because of my accent, but we are just learning a different accent, in terms of hazards and mental health. It shouldn't be too different. We might need to focus a wee bit. There might be a chance for misinterpretation, and I think that's where we are just now. The language is similar, it's just that accent. We need to be really, really, really good at our listening to this new accent. But I am genuinely interested to see the companies and the people that are managing to listen to this new accent and put it into their already practiced systems and processes and get a win for their people. So that's quite small. I think in the time that we're talking through there, John, I see a genuine excitement from me around the safety profession being able to help folks be more engaged in the work that they're doing. Yeah, and if I could think of a big hope for me, that it's people going home, especially with this topic that we're on with Mental Health Month, and I think it's a realistic challenge to put out there, is people to be keep better mental health due to the organization that they've came and worked for. How amazing would that be? How amazing would it be if somebody came to work for an organization, and because of the proactive stuff, not because of the fact that they can get EAP or any of that, but because of the proactive stuff that they do, maybe they realize that they've had some challenges and they're at risk. But because of the proactive work that goes on in a workplace, that instead of it declining, they actually come up and are better. They're not just healthy, but they are genuinely thriving. And I talk about that in terms of they're engaged with our colleagues, they're engaged with the work, they're engaged with family, they're feeling valued, they're doing stuff of purpose, they're mastering new tasks in whatever way people like to define their true thriving at work. Because they love the great quote I love reading recently was, work exists for the benefit of the workers. I remember reading this one from about 100 years ago. It says work exists for the benefits of the workers, and I think we could go some way to redressing that. So
now this might be too lofty, but I guess on that note, probably segues nicely, right? For Mental Health Awareness Month, where do you think then? How do you think businesses, and look, this might be the $1 million question, right, Alastair, but how do you think businesses and safety professionals can start prioritizing what mental health in the workplace then? And it's not just cupcakes and one day a year. I mean, how do we get to that point of readdressing that, work being for the enjoyment of the worker or the benefit of the worker?
Yeah, the benefit, work being for the benefit. Number one is, and the law helps us. I love as well how the law, people can be scared of the law and that now at times, and the law is prescriptive, this and that. Work really helps us because the law is giving us common language around things like workplace behaviours, around things like psychosocial hazards. So I do think there's embracing the information that's included within the law and within the codes of practice as a start. And getting that common language and discussions and conversations around these common psychosocial hazards. I think there's also a big part for reasonableness and pushing back and starting to help folks understand when what we might be experiencing is really uncomfortable. And I don't discount as somebody who's experienced loads of uncomfortable feelings and times at work over the years, but they weren't mental illness. There were periods and feelings of feeling really uncomfortable, which were useful, invoked me to reflect and improve and move along and be challenged, and just getting an understanding around riding the waves of life, and getting some skills and tools to support with that. Again, I don't discount how uncomfy we can feel at work and how things can challenge us. Also, then freeing up space and time and resources and coming back to the empathy bucket. And I'll bring it back to that as freeing up space for people to empathize with folks who are likely to be experiencing mental illness. So just a little bit around, we may have swung way over to one side, been able to come back to this sort of, it's almost like, when we came back to the reasonably foreseeable in terms of physical safety, not in the law, saying what's reasonably foreseeable, reasonably practicable. I think there's a real space for, in a really caring and empathetic manner at the time, to help folks understand, what they're going through, and is it the ups and downs of life, and is there some things we can do in workplaces to support with that, which we certainly can, versus necessarily self-diagnosing with mental illness, because that does a disservice to folks who have been diagnosed. Now, not to say that,
I think that's true as well.
Yeah,
it's very easy to be done now, right? Yeah,
it is easy. However, John, here's the thing, though, right? Here's the thing. These feelings, uncomfortable feelings, could be the start, right? They could. I don't discount it, right? They could be the start, unfortunately, of a journey towards mental. They could be, right? They really could be. What I would say then is that getting professional help to identify that, and then it's more likely to be supported and help. We know that, right? We can get help and we can get better, but I do think there's a bit around at the minute. Just understanding. This is where we've got to tread carefully, and that's why you maybe sense my hesitation, is that these initial early signs and symptoms might be starting on the journey towards mental illness, or they might be the ups and downs of life. We've no way of knowing that, because it's all very good to say in hindsight, right? And how we know the challenges with hindsight bias, right? We know the challenges with that. So that's where we just have to be caring of whatever people are experiencing, whether it's uncomfortableness due to the situation they're in, or whether it's due to mental illness. There are still uncomfortable ways and feelings, and hopefully we can reduce the amount of time that anybody feels that in the workplace.
Absolutely. Well, Alastair, I really thank you for your time. You're probably one of the people that are most knowledgeable, certainly in WA, on this.
Well, I'm still learning, John. Believe me, I'm just a sponge. I'm just a sponge for stuff. That's all. And I really appreciate you saying that. I've just had a little on the back of my neck there, I'll be honest with you.
Cheers, mate.
I am only trying to learn. You could say I'm only trying to learn on behalf of people, so I can share it.
Well, you're a great voice and a needed voice. So, Alastair, thanks again, mate, for being on. I'll put your details in the show notes, and obviously, if people want to reach out, you've got an open door.
Yeah, appreciate it, John. Thank you so much. And for everyone who's out there, as I joke and say, there's 1 in 5 of us will experience mental illness. So it's not unusual. It's a Tom Jones of things, right? It's not unusual. It's also not unusual to get help. It's also not unusual to get some support. It might not even be unusual to get medication or therapy. It's not unusual to get better as well. So let's see who you can, who can you maybe help out this month, because it's more prevalent than sort of what we realise. So thanks again, John. I really appreciate the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Alastair. Thank you. Well, you've got to run to swimming practice now for your daughter. But thank you very much, mate. And I'm sure you'll be on here again. Thanks a lot for joining us for another episode of the Safety Leaders podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you reach out and connect with myself as well as Sundstrom Recruitment on LinkedIn. We are the specialists health and safety recruitment in WA. Looking forward to the next episode and maybe getting to know you. Cheers.